Hey guys, what's up? So today we have a big update on the official server. Lots of things happening, so let's make it quick and fast. Remember, this update is on official server, which means it's already implemented. First on our list is the map adjustment. There is now a bush in this part of the map. Franco users will definitely enjoy hooking the buff at this spot. Next are the tower changes. You now get 15% damage reduction if you are near a tower with
We
shield.
can do it.
It will give those squishy heroes a bit of surviving power in the early game. Damage reduction will disappear if the tower's shield is removed.
Keep it up until you're as
They also increase the tower damage if you are hit more than once. This means tower diving will be harder now. Next is the Lithowanderer. Walkie Grass will follow you after you kill the Lithowanderer, and it now gives 1% mana regen for every 1 second. It will also leave a new unit called Stone Roamer. It will patrol in the river area and can expose enemies nearby. The enemies can remove the Stone Roamer by attacking it. Next is the minimap. You can now see the HP of all heroes in the minimap just like this. Timer for the red buff and blue buff can also be seen in the minimap. You can now spectate if you are feeding too much, just like this. Just press the hero icon to switch views. Next is the respawn timer. They shortened it in the early game, but made it longer at late game. This means it's harder to make epic comebacks because of the longer respawn time. Next is the Revamped Argus. He has finally arrived on the official server. I'll introduce his skills in a separate video. Next is Wanwan. They weakened her laning capability by lowering her passive damage and first skill. They also shortened the mark duration from 10 down to 6 seconds. In exchange, her ultimate can now deal critical damage. Is this enough to move Wanwan out of the ban section? Next is Johnson. Whenever he uses his ultimate, he will be seen in the minimap during the first 3 seconds. According to the developers, it will give his opponents fair time to react. Next is Angela. They increased the damage of her first skill, but in exchange, the slow effect is now weaker. You can still use Ice Queen Wand if you are worried about her slow effect. Her ultimate is buffed with a lower cooldown and higher shield. Next is Esmeralda. They lowered the shield from her first skill by 100 points in the early game. Her immobilized duration on her ultimate is now shortened from 1.2 down to 1 second. I think this nerf won't affect her too much. Next is Silvanna. They had to kill the tank version, so they adjusted her second and ultimate skill. Lower shield for her skill 2 and longer cooldown for her ultimate. In exchange, she can now activate her passive skill by using basic attacks. They also adjusted her basic attack damage so that she needs more magic power items to deal good damage. Is Silvanna tank dead, or will the trend continue? Next is Aurora. Huge damage buff on her skill 1 and ultimate skill. The higher magic scaling means she will be scary when it reaches late game. They also made the 2-3-1 combo much easier to execute than before, but in exchange, they had to lower her passive skill damage by 10%. Is this enough to bring her back to the meta? Next is Brody. They nerfed his stats because of his ability to deal good damage even when using tank items. His ultimate now has a lower base damage but higher physical attack scaling, which means you need more attack items on his build. His second skill stun duration is also nerfed from 1 second down to 0.8. Next is Sun-shin. They nerfed the damage on his passive skill in the early game because of his fast farming. The slow effect on his ultimate is removed, but the cooldown is now shorter by 8 seconds at level 1. Next is Zhong. Lower HP stats for Zhong because he acts like a tank. They also increased the cooldown of his third skill by 2 seconds in the early game. Next is Lapu-lapu. They lowered the damage of his enhanced basic attack. His heavy sword ultimate damage is also lowered. Next is Vale. They had to buff the other versions of Vale's skills so that it's not one-sided anymore. Lower cooldown on his first skill and higher magic power bonus on his second skill, stop on hit version. Next is Benedetta. Her first skill and ultimate now has a longer cooldown. But in exchange, they increase the damage of her ultimate. Next is Bane. The heal and damage on his second skill is now based on magic power. His ultimate damage now has a higher magic power scaling. His first skill cooldown can now be shortened with physical attack stats. Same for his second skill, but it's magic power. This means magic build is now viable on Bane. Next is Mathilda. Her enhanced basic attack damage is increased by 25 points. Her first skill will now target enemy minions instead of just heroes. This will affect her damage output if there are minions nearby. But in exchange, they increase its base damage by 60 points. Next is Paquito. His base shield from his first skill is now lower by 50 points. The second skill damage is adjusted by a lower base damage but higher physical attack scaling. And his ultimate now has a shorter knock-up duration, from 1 down to 0.7 seconds. Next is Terizla. His second skill now has higher damage against minions in the late game. They also lowered the cooldown of his ultimate by 8 to 6 seconds. His passive got nerfed with a weaker damage reduction from 45 down to 35%. Next is Barats. They increased the damage of his enhanced basic attack. They also increased the damage of his first skill. Good news for Barats users. Next is Alpha. More buffs for this guy. Higher HP growth, increased second skill damage, and shortened ultimate cooldown. His ultimate cooldown is now at 12 seconds at max level. Next is Dyrroth. They added a base heal of 50 points on his passive skill. This gives him better sustainability in the early stage of the game. Next is Moskov. They increased the attack speed in the early levels of his first skill, from 20 to now 40% at level 1. Next is Harley. You can now see a timer on Harley's ultimate. Next is Helcurt. They lowered the volume on Helcurt's second skill. Next is Faramis. He now gains an assist if the revived teammates gets a kill. Next is the new marksman Beatrix. She will be available on March 19 with a 30% discount. Next are the item changes. First is the Queen's Wings. They increased its physical attack and lowered its HP. Its damage reduction is also nerfed from 40 down to 30%. Next is Immortality. Longer resurrection time from 2 to now 2.5 seconds. The amount of shield is adjusted and the cooldown is now longer, from 3 minutes to now 3.5 minutes. Next is the Clock of Destiny. It now has a maximum stack of 12 instead of 10. They also adjusted the attribute growth as well as the interval. If we do the math, you will now get full stacks at 4 minutes instead of 5. The amount of HP remains the same, but the magic power is lower by 2 points. Next are the jungle items. They increase the penalty of jungle item users when laning. They now get less 50% gold and experience on the first 5 minutes. Previously, it was just 40%. To make up for this nerf, they increased the jungler's gold. Hunter's Knife now gives plus 25% gold on creeps. Other jungling items get 35% more gold. Junglers will now have an easier time to farm on this update. Next are the Fragment Shop update. It will take effect on March 17 server time. This is for the rare skin Fragment Shop. And this is for the hero Fragment Shop. Next is the new Starlight Event that will take effect on April 1. You can now choose one Starlight skin out of the 5 options when you buy a Starlight subscription. Survival Nexus is now available to play. Last one is the matchmaking changes. Queue time is now shorter for Warrior, Elite, and Mythic rank games. Your favorite role is now a factor in the matchmaking algorithm. It means there is now a higher chance to be matched with players using different rules. So what can you say about the update? Which part did you like the most? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. That's all for this video. Stay safe and thank you for watching.